She thought I was just a rebellious teenager. She didn't know I was secretly recording her fraud plot. Until we trapped her into signing away her own wealth. My father's love for my mother was the cornerstone of my existence, a legendary tale I grew up with, a foundational myth that defined the man he was, and the love I was meant to aspire to. They met not in a mundane office or a crowded bar, but on a hiking trail in the Austrian Alps, a setting so perfect it felt destined. He, a young American architect on a backpacking tour of Europe, she, a vibrant Italian artist sketching the wildflowers. A sudden torrential mountain rain sent them both scrambling for the same small shelter under a granite overhang. He always said he fell in love with three things in that exact order: her infectious, fearless laughter as she shook the rain from her dark curls, the determined spark in her eyes, and the way she effortlessly sketched his portrait on a damp piece of paper, capturing, she said, the lonely wonder in his soul. Their whirlwind romance was a blaze of passion across Europe, a fusion of his structured American ambition and her free-spirited European soul. They married within a year. My mother's name was Sophia, and I never got to hear that laughter myself. She died, a tragic and cruel twist of fate giving birth to me. I was the reason for her greatest joy and her final breath. My father, Marco, was utterly shattered. The love of his life was gone, and in her place was a newborn son who bore her eyes. He told me later that in his deepest grief, he resented me for a single, terrifying moment. But then he held me, and he saw her in my face, and he made a vow. I became his mission, the living legacy of the woman he adored. He built a highly successful architecture and real estate development firm, not for fame or fortune, but to create a world of security and beauty for me. Our home was a shrine to her memory. Her paintings adorned the walls, her favorite jazz records filled the silence on Sundays, and my father's love was a fierce, protective fortress around us. This is a story about the day that fortress was almost breached from within, and the extreme lengths we went to in order to defend it. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the most dangerous battles are fought not against strangers, but against those who wear the mask of family. If you believe in justice, in the unbreakable bond between a parent and a child, then you need to hear how we fought back. For more epic tales of betrayal, cunning, and ultimate vindication, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's get back to the story. The calm of our lives lasted for 17 years. The shadow, when it came, did not arrive with a storm, but with a carefully calculated whisper. Her name was Evelyn. She entered my father's life at a charity auction his firm was sponsoring. She was a recent widow, she said, and she possessed a polished, sophisticated beauty that was the complete opposite of my mother's wild, artistic charm. Where my mother was vibrant and spontaneous, Evelyn was measured and deliberate. I saw the way she looked at my father, not with the genuine warmth he described seeing in my mother's eyes, but with the appraising gaze of a collector finding a valuable, undervalued piece. I was 17, old enough to sense the calculation, but too young to have the vocabulary for it. It was the little things. The way she always knew exactly what to say to make my father smile, her compliments a little too perfect. The way she subtly aligned her opinions with his. She created an echo chamber of his own thoughts, and he, a man who had been lonely for so long, basked in the reflection. My initial teenage skepticism was dismissed by my father as resistance to change. "Give her a chance, Leo," he'd say, using the nickname only he and my mother used. "She makes me happy." They were married in a quiet ceremony just 3 months after they met. The speed was a red flag I was powerless to stop. Evelyn moved into our home, the sanctuary my father and I had built, and she brought her 2 sons with her, Marcus and Liam, twins who were 2 years my senior. They were carbon copies of their mother, polished on the surface, with a cold, entitled arrogance lurking just beneath. The smooth period began. The house was perpetually immaculate. Meals were gourmet events. Evelyn played the part of the perfect stepmother with Oscar-worthy dedication. But the interference began almost immediately. It started with my hobbies. "Leo, don't you think that skateboarding is a little juvenile and so dangerous? What if you break your hand? You need them for your studies." Then it was my friends.
"Oh, that Jake boy is so loud."
"His family is, well, they're not exactly our kind of people, are they?" My father, wanting peace, would gently suggest, "I listen to Evelyn. She has a point." The most devastating change was the slow, insidious campaign to rewrite my character in my father's eyes. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, conducted in whispers and implied concerns. I'd hear them talking in the kitchen. "Marco, I'm worried about Leo. I found a bottle of vodka in his closet. I didn't want to bother you, but I thought you should know." There was no bottle. It was a lie. When I confronted her, her eyes would well up with tears. "Why would you say such a thing, Leo? I'm only trying to help." My father, torn, would plead with me. "Son, she's just trying to connect. Don't be so hard on her." The arguments between my father and me became a regular feature of our lives. The easy trust we shared was being systematically eroded. I was being painted as the rebellious, troubled son, jealous of the new happiness in my father's life. I felt like a ghost in my own home, watching a stranger slowly possessing my father's mind. The turning point came exactly 6 months after the wedding. I came home late from the library to find the house dark except for the light in my father's study. The door was slightly ajar. I was about to push it open and say hello when I heard Evelyn's voice, low and urgent. "It has to be tomorrow, Marco. Henderson is waiting. It's a simple asset transfer for the new corporate holding structure. It will save us a fortune in taxes. Just sign here and here." A cold dread washed over me. I peered through the crack. My father looked tired, overwhelmed by the stack of papers in front of him. "Evelyn, I haven't had a chance to have my lawyer look at these. There's so much." "Your lawyer is old and slow," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "This is time-sensitive. Don't you trust me? I'm your wife. I'm handling this for us, for our family's future." That word, family, was the trigger. I knew, with a certainty that chilled my bones, that she was not talking about me. I retreated into the shadows, my heart hammering. I couldn't confront him, not without proof. His faith in her was a wall my words couldn't breach. I needed evidence. I needed to show him the truth he was refusing to see. The next day, I withdrew all my savings from a summer job. I went to a specialty electronics store downtown and, with a pounding heart, purchased a high-resolution, miniature hidden camera. It was disguised as a functional USB wall charger. My plan was reckless, but it was all I had. I waited for a moment when the house was empty, my hands shaking as I replaced the old charger in the main living room outlet with this new one. Its wide-angle lens had a perfect view of the main sofa and armchairs, where all their family meetings took place. For 2 weeks, I lived in a state of constant anxiety. I would retrieve the camera's memory card late at night, reviewing the footage on my laptop with headphones on. Most of it was mundane, but then I struck gold. I recorded Evelyn and her sons, Marcus and Liam, having a conversation when they thought my father was on a long phone call. "The old man is getting suspicious," Marcus said, slouching on the sofa. "Just keep pushing." Evelyn replied, her voice cold and steady. "We're almost there. The Henderson portfolio is the last major asset. Once that's in my name, we control everything. The company, the properties, all of it." "And the kid?" Liam asked. Evelyn's lip curled. "Leo, he'll be cut off. He's a spoiled brat living in the past. Once we have control, we can start pressuring Marco to reassess his priorities. Maybe a nice quiet retirement home."
He's been so stressed lately, don't you think?
I felt a nausea so profound I had to run to the bathroom. This was beyond greed. It was a cold-blooded plan for a hostile takeover of our entire lives. They were going to steal my father's life's work, alienate him from his own son, and discard him. The final piece of evidence came a few days later. I recorded Evelyn explicitly laying out the forged documents for my father to sign, coaching her sons. "Remember, it's for tax purposes. He's so overwhelmed with work, he won't question it. He's so overwhelmed with work, he won't question it." I had everything I needed. That night, I went to my father's bedroom. He was reading, the lines of stress deeper on his face than I'd ever seen them. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "we need to talk. It's about Evelyn, and I have proof." I played the videos for him on my laptop. I watched the color drain from his face. I saw his hands clench the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. When he heard Evelyn say the words retirement home, a single tear traced a path down his cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was one of pure, unadulterated rage and heartbreak. The video ended, and the silence in the room was heavier than any sound. He looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw my father. The doubt, the confusion was gone, replaced by a clear, sharp focus. "My God, Leo," he whispered, his voice rough. "What have I done? What did I almost let happen?" He pulled me into a crushing hug. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry I didn't believe you." After a moment, he pulled back, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. It was a smile I had never seen before, the smile of a brilliant strategist who had just been handed his enemy's battle plans. "They think they're playing chess," he said, his voice now steady and cold. "But they're about to learn we've been playing a different game altogether. We're not going to expose them yet. We're going to let them think they've won." The next morning, my father went to see his original lawyer, a man named Arthur who had been a friend of my mother's. He showed Arthur the videos. Together they devised a plan of breathtaking audacity. Arthur drafted a new set of legal documents. They were designed to look nearly identical to the ones Evelyn was pushing. Same formatting, similar legalese. But the content was completely different. Instead of transferring my father's assets to Evelyn, these new documents were a spousal asset consolidation agreement. In essence, it stated that for the purposes of estate planning and marital unity, all separately held assets of both parties would be merged into a single trust. The kicker? The sole beneficiary of that trust was me, Leo. And as the grantor, my father would retain full control until my 25th birthday. The trap was set. My dad came home and told Evelyn he was ready to sign the tax papers. The triumph in her eyes was palpable. She laid out her forged documents on his desk. With a performance worthy of an award, my father feigned reluctance, then signed them with a flourish. Then, as if it were an afterthought, he slid his own set of papers across the desk. Arthur mentioned that, for this to work, "We need to file a simultaneous consolidation affidavit," he said, his voice a masterclass of nonchalance. "It's just a formality to verify your assets for the new corporate structure. It needs your signature and the boys as witnesses." Blinded by greed and the belief that her victory was complete, Evelyn barely glanced at the document. She signed. She called in Marcus and Liam, who, with smug smiles, signed as witnesses. The moment the last signature was dry, my father stood up. He walked to the door and closed it, turning the lock with a definitive click. The sound made all three of them look up. "It's done," my father said, his voice now devoid of all warmth, dropping to a sub-zero calm. Evelyn smiled. "Good, I'll have these filed first thing in the—" "These," my father interrupted, holding up the real document Arthur had prepared. "State that every asset you owned, the inheritance from your first husband, the stocks, the lake house, now belongs to a trust for Leo. You just signed everything you have over to my son." The confusion on her face was almost comical. Then it morphed into dawning horror. "What? No! That's not what that was!" "Oh, but it is," my father said. He then picked up the documents she had given him. "And these, the ones you had me sign to transfer my estate to you, are forgeries. They are legally worthless. And I have you on camera conspiring to commit fraud." He turned on the television, where I had queued up the most damning clip. The begging started immediately. It was a pathetic, desperate display. They pleaded, they cried, they blamed each other. They called us monsters. But our hearts were encased in armor forged from months of their deception. The betrayal had been too deep, the plan too cruel. "Get out of my house," my father said, his voice leaving no room for appeal. "You have 30 minutes to pack your personal belongings. If you are not gone by then, I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing and attempted fraud." We watched them leave, their postures broken, their schemes in ashes. The silence that settled back into the house was not the tense, heavy silence of the previous months, but a deep, profound peace. The shadow was gone. The victory was about more than property. It was about the restoration of truth. It was about my father looking at me, his eyes clear and full of a love that had been tested and found unbreakable, and saying, "You have your mother's courage. You saved us. We didn't just reclaim our estate. We reclaimed our legacy, our sanctuary, and the unshakable bond that my mother's memory had always represented. We had turned their own greed into their downfall, and in doing so, we forged a new chapter for our family, built on a foundation of truth and hardened in the fire of betrayal.